You are 18 years old. Your father just died. His liver gave out. The wine, the stress, the 17 years of begging Rome not to replace him. He left you two things, a throne and a debt of 17.5 million drachmas to a Roman banker named Rabirius Postumus. That's not an inheritance, that's a mortgage with a legionary enforcement clause. Your name is Cleopatra VII Theophilopater. In Greek it means glory of the father, the goddess who loves her father. They named you after loyalty to a man who spent half his reign in exile and the other half borrowing money to buy it back. That's not a name, that's a job description. You rule Egypt. Or more accurately, you manage a franchise that's been operating for 275 years under the Ptolemaic brand, which itself was carved from the corporate breakup of Alexander the Great's empire in 323 BCE. You are the regional director. Rome is the parent company, and the parent company has been reviewing your territory's performance metrics with increasing interest. Here's what nobody explained during your onboarding. The position of Pharaoh has a 100% termination rate, not retirement, termination. Your great-grandmother was murdered by her son. Your uncle was lynched by a mob in Alexandria. Your aunt ruled for 6 months before they shipped her back to Rome in chains. Your own father was kicked out of Egypt twice. The family tree doesn't branch. It loops, it tangles, and every few years, it catches fire. Before we talk about you, let's talk about the company you inherited. In 305 BC, a Macedonian general named Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander's drinking buddies who happened to be competent, claimed Egypt after Alexander's empire split like a startup after the founder dies. He didn't conquer Egypt, he installed himself. Different verb. Important distinction. The Ptolemies never became Egyptian. For 275 years, they spoke Greek at court, married their own siblings to keep the bloodline pure, 14 generations of strategic incest, and ruled from Alexandria, a city that was more Mediterranean than African. The actual Egyptians, the farmers, the priests, the 7 million people who kept the grain growing, were clients, not citizens. The Ptolemies managed them the way a hotel chain manages housekeeping staff, essential to operations, invisible in the boardroom. But here's the brilliant part. The Ptolemies understood branding. In Alexandria, they were Hellenistic kings, philosophy, libraries, geometry. In Memphis and Thebes, they were pharaohs, gods on earth, Horus incarnate, protectors of Matat. Same person, different PowerPoint. They built temples to Egyptian gods they didn't worship. They performed rituals they didn't believe in. They funded a priesthood that legitimized their rule in exchange for tax exemptions and land grants. That's not religion. That's a licensing agreement. For 2.5 centuries, it worked. Then it stopped working. The last 5 Ptolemies before you were a parade of incompetence, paranoia, and fratricide. Your grandfather Ptolemy IX was kicked off the throne by his own mother. Your father Ptolemy XII was kicked off the throne by his own people and had to bribe the Roman Senate, literally individual senators, cash in hand, to send an army to reinstall him. The price tag, 10,000 talents. That's roughly 300 tons of silver, Egypt's entire annual revenue. You inherit a company that's technically profitable. Egypt produces 20 million made of grain per year, enough to feed Rome for 4 months, but operationally bankrupt. Your treasury is empty, your army is a joke, your fleet is decorative, and your shareholders, the priests, the Alexandrian Greeks, the Egyptian peasantry, all want different things. But you have one thing no Ptolemy before you had in 275 years. You speak Egyptian, not court Egyptian, not the ceremonial phrases your ancestors memorized for temple dedications, actual Egyptian. You also speak Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic, Syriac, Parthian, Ethiopian, and the language of the troglodytes. 9 languages total. You're the first Ptolemaic ruler who can walk into a temple in Dendera and speak to the high priest without a translator. You can negotiate a grain contract in Thebes, argue law in Alexandria, and flatter a Roman general, all before lunch. That sounds like a superpower. It's not. It's a diagnostic tool, because when you understand everyone, you understand exactly what they want from you, and what they want is never you. It's the grain. It's the strategic position between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. It's the 275-year-old brand name that still makes Egyptians kneel. You are the most qualified person to ever hold this position, and the position was designed to destroy you. Your co-ruler is your brother, Ptolemy XIII. He's 10 years old. In the Ptolemaic franchise agreement, siblings co-rule. Usually they also marry each other. It's not romantic. It's a legal merger. 2 names on the same letterhead. Except Ptolemy XIII has advisors, 3 of them. Pothinus, the eunuch who manages the treasury. Theodotus, the rhetorician who manages public opinion. and Achilles, the general who manages the army. 3 men who have no legitimate claim to power and therefore need a puppet king. They can operate by remote control. A 10-year-old is perfect. An 18-year-old woman who speaks 9 languages and can outmaneuver them in any room is a problem. Within 2 years, they make their move. You're stripped of your title. Your name is removed from official documents. Your coins, and in the ancient world, coins are press releases, are replaced with your brother's face. You flee east to the Syrian border, with a mercenary force you can barely afford. This is the moment most people lose, not because the situation is hopeless, but because the instinct is to fight, to raise an army, to march back. You don't have the resources for a military solution. You have 2,500 mercenaries against Alexandria's garrison of 20,000. The math doesn't work. So you wait. And then, God, or history, or luck, or the logical consequence of Roman imperialism, sends you Julius Caesar. September 48 BC. Caesar arrives in Alexandria chasing Pompey, his rival in Rome's civil war. Except Pompey is already dead. Ptolemy XIII's advisors killed him as a gift to Caesar, chopped off his head, preserved it in a jar, presented it like a quarterly earnings report. Look what we did for you. Caesar is not impressed. Killing a Roman consul without Roman authorization isn't a gift. It's a liability. It means Ptolemy's people are willing to murder political figures for strategic advantage, which means they'll do it to Caesar if the math changes. You see the opening. You don't send an ambassador. You don't write a letter. You smuggle yourself into Caesar's quarters in a linen sack, carried over the shoulder of a single servant named Apollodorus, through the harbor, past the guards, into the palace that was yours 8 months ago. Here's what you're doing, and it's not seduction, it's venture capital. You are offering Caesar something nobody else can. Egypt's grain supply is a guaranteed Roman asset, operated by a friendly local executive who speaks Latin and understands Roman law. No invasion required, no expensive occupation, no rebellion to put down every 18 months, just you, on the throne, cooperative, profitable. Caesar does the math. It takes him about 4 hours. 9 months later, you have a son, Caesarion. Little Caesar. That child is not a baby. That child is a living contract, biological proof that Rome and Egypt are partners, a receipt written in DNA. But here's the trap you didn't see. Every tool is also a leash. Caesarion ties you to Caesar, which means you're tied to Caesar's fate. And Caesar's fate is a marble floor on March 15th, 44 BC. 23 stab wounds. You're in Rome when it happens. You're staying in Caesar's villa across the Tiber. You leave within the week. You don't even pack properly. You fly back to Alexandria with a 4-year-old son who is technically the heir to the most powerful man in history, and absolutely no institutional protection. Your stock just went to zero. Rome splits again. This time it's Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, 19 years old, cold as accounting software, versus Mark Antony, Caesar's top general, who gets the eastern half of the empire. Everything from Greece to Syria, which means you report to Antony now. Antony summons you to Tarsus in 41 BC. It's an audit. He wants to know why Egypt supported one of Caesar's assassins during the Civil War. You did support Cassius, briefly, strategically, because when your only protector gets stabbed in the Senate, you hedge your bets. But you can't explain that to Antony. You have to make him forget the question. You arrive on a barge, cedar hull, purple sails, silver oars. The rowers keep time to flutes. The deck is covered in rose petals. Not scattered, layered. You're dressed as Aphrodite, not because you think you're a goddess, because Antony has been telling everyone in the eastern provinces that he's Dionysus reborn, and Aphrodite is Dionysus's mythological partner. You're not flirting. You're speaking his language. Language number 10. The party lasts 4 days. The bill is what a Roman legion costs for a year. Antony never asks about Cassius again. Over the next decade, you build something that has never existed, a Roman-Egyptian power block that controls the entire eastern Mediterranean. Antony gives you Cyprus, parts of Cilicia, Phoenicia, Judea's balsam groves, the Nabatean bitumen trade. You give him 200 ships, grain supply lines, and the financial infrastructure to fund his war against Parthia. You have 3 more children together: Alexander Helios, Cleopatra VII, Ptolemy Philadelphus, son, moon, and brother lover. You name them like brand extensions. In 34 BC, the donations of Alexandria, a public ceremony where Antony distributes eastern territories to your children. Caesarion is declared king of kings. Alexander gets Armenia. Cleopatra Selene gets Cyrenaica. It's a corporate restructuring disguised as a royal ceremony, and it's the single biggest mistake of your career, because in Rome, Octavian is watching. And Octavian doesn't see a political arrangement. He sees a Roman general giving Roman territory to a foreign queen and her children. He reads your will, which Antony deposited in the Temple of Vesta, because Antony was sentimental and stupid, and publishes it in the Senate. Antony wants to be buried in Alexandria, not Rome. Alexandria. That's all Octavian needs. He doesn't declare war on Antony. That would be civil war, and Romans are tired of civil war. He declares war on you, Cleopatra, the foreign queen, the Eastern menace, the woman who corrupted a Roman hero. It's a masterclass in rebranding. The war isn't brother versus brother. It's Rome versus Egypt, civilization versus corruption, and you're the villain. September 2nd, 31 BC. Actium, the western coast of Greece. Your combined fleet, 230 warships, many of them massive quinqueremes, faces Octavian's 400 lighter, faster Liburnians, commanded by Marcus Agrippa, the only military genius in the Mediterranean who is not emotionally compromised. Here's the situation. Your ships are heavier, but your crews are depleted. A malaria outbreak killed nearly a third of your rowers in the weeks before the battle. Antony's land forces are deserting. Every morning, another general slips across the bay to Octavian's camp. The supply lines are cut. You've been blockaded for months. Antony wants to fight. He always wants to fight. That's his solution to everything. Charge, break through, overwhelm. It worked at Philippi. It won't work here, because Agrippa doesn't make emotional decisions, and your depleted crews can't sustain a prolonged engagement. You have a different plan. Load the war chest, the gold, the grain reserves, the liquid assets, onto your 60 best ships, break through the center of Octavian's line, retreat to Egypt, regroup, fight another day. The breakout works. Your squadron punches through. You raise your purple sails, the signal, and run south with the treasury and 60 ships. Antony sees you go, and here's where everything ends. Not at Actium, but in Antony's skull, in the 3 seconds between seeing your sails and making his choice. He follows you. He abandons his fleet. He abandons his army. He abandons 19 legions on shore who will surrender to Octavian within the week. He takes a small escort and chases your sails south. A general who follows is no longer a general. He's a dependent, and everyone knows it, including him. The next 11 months are a slow audit. Antony tries to negotiate with Octavian. Octavian doesn't respond. You try to negotiate with Octavian. Octavian responds. He says he'll consider sparing Egypt if you kill Antony or drive him out. You don't take the deal. Whether out of loyalty, calculation, or the understanding that Octavian's promises have a default rate of 100%, you stay. August 1st, 30 BC. Octavian's army reaches Alexandria. Antony's remaining troops defect overnight. The fleet you spent a decade building surrenders without firing a volley. Antony rides out to fight with a cavalry detachment that melts away like ice on sand. He comes back to the palace, and someone, a messenger, a servant, a rumor, tells him you're dead. He falls on his sword. Roman tradition, except he misses the vital organs. He doesn't die immediately. They carry him, bleeding, conscious, in extraordinary pain, to the mausoleum where you've barricaded yourself with the treasury. The doors are sealed. They haul him up through a window on ropes, you and 2 handmaidens pulling a dying man through a 2nd-story window. He bleeds out in your arms. His last words, according to Plutarch, "Don't pity me. Remember the good days. I was the most illustrious of men, and it is not ignoble to die as a Roman defeated by a Roman. Even in death, he makes it about Rome." Octavian enters Alexandria. He wants 2 things: Egypt's treasury and you, alive in chains, walking through Rome in his triumph. A living trophy, the defeated queen displayed like a quarterly earnings chart, proving ROI on the war. You know what a Roman triumph looks like. They paraded your sister Arsinoe through Rome in chains 15 years ago. The crowd felt sorry for her. Caesar let her live. Octavian is not Caesar. Octavian does not have moments of clemency. Octavian has policy. You negotiate for 10 days. You ask to keep your children safe. You ask to be allowed to perform funeral rites for Antony. You ask and ask and ask, because every day you're negotiating is a day you're not in chains. Octavian agrees to everything, because Octavian's agreements are filing cabinets. He stores them and never opens them again. August 12th, 30 BC. A basket of figs arrives. Inside, beneath the fruit, an Egyptian cobra, an asp. You've planned this, maybe for weeks, maybe for months, maybe since Actium, when you watched Antony's sails turn south and understood that the last Roman who would ever protect Egypt was now the man who would destroy it. The bite is fast. The venom is neurotoxic. It paralyzes the respiratory system. You die in your mausoleum, dressed in full royal regalia, lying on a golden couch. You're 39 years old. You've ruled Egypt for 21 years. You outlasted 2 Roman civil wars, 3 Roman dictators, and an entire dynasty of your own relatives trying to kill you. Your handmaidens, Iris and Charmian, die with you, When Octavian's men break in, Charmian is adjusting the crown on your head. One of the soldiers says, "Is this right, Charmian?" And she answers, "It is entirely right, and fitting for the descendant of so many kings." Then she collapses, and the Ptolemaic franchise closes permanently after 275 years of continuous operation. Octavian renames himself Augustus. He turns Egypt into his personal property, not a Roman province, not a senatorial territory. No Roman senator is allowed to visit Egypt without his permission, because whoever controls Egypt's grain controls Rome, and now that's one man, Caesarion, your son, the biological child of Julius Caesar, the last Ptolemy, is found, arrested, and executed. He's 17. Octavian's advisor tells him, too many Caesars is not a good thing. A boardroom quip, a child's death sentence. Your other children survive. Cleopatra VII is married off to the king of Mauritania. Alexander Helios and Ptolemy Philadelphus disappear from history. No records, no graves, no coins. They simply stop being mentioned, the way a company deletes a failed product from its website. Your body is buried, supposedly, next to Antony's, nobody knows where. 2,000 years of archaeology, satellite imaging, and ground-penetrating radar, and the most famous woman of the ancient world is simply gone. But here's the thing about your story that nobody tells you. You didn't lose because you made bad decisions. Every decision you made was the optimal play given your constraints. You allied with Caesar because Rome was going to absorb Egypt regardless, and a partnership was better than a conquest. You allied with Antony because the Eastern Mediterranean needed a counterweight to Octavian, and Antony had the legions. You fought at Actium because surrender meant chains, and you'd seen what Roman chains look like on a queen's wrists. You lost because the position was terminal. It was terminal before you were born. It was terminal when your great-great-grandfather, Ptolemy I Soter, took a throne that was borrowed from a dead Macedonian's empire. Egypt was always going to become Roman. The grain was too valuable, the geography was too strategic, the wealth was too visible. You didn't inherit a kingdom, you inherited a countdown, and you spent 21 years making the countdown feel like an empire. Every language you learned was another wall you could see through. 9 languages, 9 ways to understand that everyone around you, the priests, the generals, the lovers, the senators, was calculating your utility, not your worth, your utility. And the moment your utility dropped below the cost of maintaining you, the contract was void. That's the lesson they don't put in the history books. Talent doesn't save you. Competence doesn't save you. Being the smartest person in every room you enter doesn't save you. It just means you see the ending clearly, while everyone else is still reading the first act. You are Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh, the most competent executive in a company that was already in receivership, and the position was always terminal. If you made it to the end, you already understand something most people don't. The most dangerous prisons are the ones that look like palaces. I will be making videos like this in the near future. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe before the algorithm buries this next to a video about crypto.